Blind CEO's daughter, alone before surgery, experiences an incredible twist from a single dad. The rain drummed steadily against the window, mirroring the chaotic thoughts swirling in Clara Blake's mind. The whispers of Chicago's busy streets faded as she sat alone in the corner of her favorite coffee shop, the weight of her father's blindness and her impending surgery pulling her spirit in every direction. Just days before a procedure that promised to correct more than just her vision, she felt every bit the daughter of Richard Blake, an emblem of strength and success, yet tripped over her own expectations. This high-stakes inheritance felt suffocating. Her gaze fell to the table, where a thin line of coffee steam rose and curled like the thoughts in her head. Would she rise up to fulfill the legacy, or would this gaping uncertainty swallow her whole? Clara hesitated, caught in the fear of being overshadowed by her father's monumental achievements. Every accolade he received painted a brighter spotlight on her perceived inadequacies. It wasn't just the physical ailment she was battling, there was a mental fog where doubt coalesced. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" A voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She looked up, startled. The intrusion was a man in well-worn sneakers, a crumpled shirt with a warm smile that graced his face despite the exhaustion etched beneath it. At once, he seemed so far removed from her world where appearances mattered, yet there was something profoundly relatable about him. No, it's not," Clara managed, her voice sounding almost foreign in her ears. The barista called out orders, laughter rang through the cafe, but for Clara, the chaos felt alien, like a screen pulled over her true self. As he settled in and introduced himself as Lucas, the naturalness of conversation quickly bridged the distance between their vastly different lives. They spoke about their contrasting struggles, her anxiety over surgery and corporate obligations, and his relentless pursuit to provide for his spirited daughter. Within minutes, Clara felt this odd tether forming, pulling her out of the suffocating world dominated by corporate offices where she felt invisible. "I get it," Lucas shared, his gaze steady and sincere. "People see problems instead of potential. It's like trying to climb a mountain while everyone underestimates how far you've already come." His words struck a chord, resonating with the fear she kept caged, custodian of this burden of familial expectations. She hadn't realized how desperate she was to be understood, to be more than the blind CEO's daughter. Before they parted ways, Clara allowed herself to slip a sliver of vulnerability into the conversation. She confided in him about the corporate conspiracy threatening her father's company. Disillusion soaked her heart. In that moment of shared fears, she realized Lucas really saw her, not the name, not the image, but Clara. Just as the seeds of self-discovery began to sprout, her phone buzzed violently with alarming news. The betrayal she'd uncovered struck her like a lightning bolt. She stood on the precipice of revealing a dark underbelly of greed, questioning the loyalty to her family or to the truth. As the rain cascaded heavier, Clara felt suffocated again, caught between loyalty to her father's legacy and the need to protect the company. With a torrent of uncertainty raging inside, Clara faced a choice. Lucas's words echoed in her mind as she prepared for what lay ahead. Would she embrace her identity and confront the danger? Or would she retreat into the duality of obligation and fear? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Clara clutched her phone, dread seeped through her exhausted resolve. In that moment of impending confrontation, she had to decide, could she fight for justice without losing the identity her father believed she could embody? With trembling hands, she prepared to make the call that might change everything. Tension surged in her chest as the rain blurred the world outside, just like her own sense of self. Holding her phone, Clara felt its weight expand, an anchor tethering her to both fear and necessity. The raindrops danced chaotically against the glass, creating a veil that mirrored the turmoil in her mind. She needed to act, but what came next could alter the course of her life. perhaps irreparably. The corporate conspiracy loomed, unmasking it seemed like a Herculean task, and yet denying it would signal complicity. "Get it together," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the sound of raindrops. For too long, the image of being her father's daughter defined her now, she had to reclaim her narrative. Every fiber of her being urged her to stand tall against the looming threat. Clara could feel that her surgery next week was the threshold to not just physical clarity but also personal empowerment. With a steadying breath, she dialed the number of a trusted family attorney. His name surfaced in her mind like a life buoy amidst turbulent waters. Transitioning from the abstract fears of potential betrayal to concrete action felt daunting, yet this was her moment to confront both the truth of her father's company and her own place within it. As the phone rang, she busied herself with thoughts of her father's legacy, the sacrifices made, the lessons learned at his side. He's built this empire through perseverance, she reminded herself, yet the glint of avarice tainted those achievements. She couldn't wipe the slander from the organization alone, but maybe she could start by untangling the threads around the conspiracy and find those who were loyal to the core values their family upheld. "Clara, is everything all right?" came the voice on the other end, tinged with concern. There was comfort in his familiarity, but she could not afford to waver. "Mr. Jones, I need your help immediately," she said, the urgency sharpening her tone. "I've uncovered something concerning the board and I think it's significant." Each word carried the weight of implications for her family, but she had to press forward. As ideas and strategies unfolded during that call, she felt invigorated, the thrill of discovery filling the void left by dread. This wasn't just about her vision anymore, it was about her family's integrity and the truth behind the corporate facade. She could be an agent of change. After hanging up, Clara looked outside as if to beckon the universe for guidance. The rain had started to let up, the clouds slowly parting to reveal strips of blue. Symbolic, perhaps, of her own shifting perspective. A surge of determination coursed through her. She wasn't aiming to tear down her father's empire but to uphold and protect the values it represented. She wouldn't become a mere spectator trapped beneath a gilded past. Clara's position as the CEO's daughter would not be a cloak of obligation, it would be armor to fight for her own rights and righteousness. With each passing moment, she visualized the steps she would take, gathering evidence, rallying allies who shared her vision, and standing resolute against those who traded ethics for greed. The transformation had begun. Every ounce of her resolve echoed with the words Lucas had spoken. She had already come farther than anyone knew. The door chimed as she exited the cafe, armed with her newfound clarity. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that danger loomed closer, that the enemies she sought to expose were 2 steps ahead, perhaps ready to retaliate against a challenge they did not see coming. Just then, Clara checked her phone and saw a new message that made her heart race, a threat warning her to back off from digging deeper into her father's company. The creeping shadows behind her grew more menacing as she read the lines that shifted her world once again. Would she stand firm or would fear take root within? The groundwork was laid, but how far was she willing to go to protect what mattered most? The echoes of her father's lessons rang loudly in her ears as she prepared for a confrontation that might change everything. Clara's grip tightened on her phone, the cold metal feeling more like a weapon than a device for communication. Each word of the threat replayed in her mind, a sinister chant that echoed her deepest fears. The rain's retreating rhythm no longer whispered assurance, it told her that a storm was brewing, one driven not by dark skies but by treachery within her own bloodline. What are they willing to do to silence me? She thought, her pulse quickening. A wave of anger suffused her, how could they stoop so low? Clara's vulnerability felt stark, the impending surgery a double-edged sword, a chance for physical rebirth, yet also the potential for dulling her resolve while she recovered. Fear nipped at her heels, but she shook it off, channeling her emotions into a focused determination. If she was to take action, she needed clarity, and the chaos engulfing her mind wasn't going to help. She set her jaw and stomped down the street, each stride a calculation of purpose. Freshly awakened ambition surged. This was her moment. She would not be the bystander in her family's narrative any longer. The shadows trailing her could not snuff out the light of her aspirations. Her first step was to locate the dissenters within the company. Surely, there were employees who still believed in the principles upon which her father built his empire. Clara remembered her father's emphasis during board meetings, the importance of transparency and integrity. She resolved to find those staff members, whistleblowers who could corroborate the treachery she suspected. Halfway to her apartment, she paused, recalling Mr. Jones's advice. To pursue the truth, she first had to fortify her position. She needed undeniable proof, and for that, she had to think like the enemy. With a swift tap on her screen, she initiated a group chat with her closest allies, former colleagues whose loyalty hadn't faltered. Their support would be crucial. She had to assemble a coalition ready to stand by her side against the board's corruption. "Meet me at my place in 1 hour. I have a plan," she typed, her fingers a blur on the screen. Every response chimed back, resonating with determination. It inspired a rush of adrenaline that pushed her doubts aside. As she approached her apartment building, Monica, one of her key allies, rang her bell moments before she reached for the latch. Clara opened the door to find her friend's expression a mixture of concern and resolve. "I got your message," Monica began, scanning Clara's face. "What is going on?" "It's worse than I thought," Clara replied, urgency threading her voice. "We need to act quickly." After a brief briefing over coffees brewed strong enough to fuel their fight, Clara laid out her strategy. They would engage with people still loyal to her father, creating an anonymous channel for information sharing. This would safeguard their identities, allowing them to bring to light everything obscured beneath the layers of deceit, but in the back of Clara's mind lingered that message, a malignant specter foreshadowing what was to come. What if her efforts put her in the crosshairs of someone who didn't care about preserving a legacy? The thought chilled her. Was she ready to risk everything, her father's name, her own future, even her safety? With every layer of her plan unfurling, Clara sensed the gravity of the path she was on. Each decision felt laden with consequence. Slowly, she began to see flashes of her father's influence within her own choices. She wasn't merely seeking confrontation, she was reclaiming her narrative as the steward of his values against the invasive weeds of greed. As the trio plotted their road ahead, Clara felt a shift inside her. The shadows she had once feared now felt like tools she would wield to shine light on the truth buried within the corporate hierarchy. Amid their discussion, Clara's phone vibrated sharply, illuminating the screen and drawing her gaze. Another message, her heart pounding as she read, "You have no idea who you're up against." The warning clawed at her edge of resolve, clashing with her growing sense of agency. Would she back down, or would the whispers of her father and the faces of those she sought to protect encourage her to stand firm? The moment of irrevocable choice loomed ahead, teetering perilously close to her threshold of safety. What must she uncover next, and at what cost? With the weight of the threat still echoing in her mind, Clara felt urgency coursing through her veins. The coffee she had sipped earlier, intended to steel her nerves, now merely fueled her determination. She gathered Monica and the others close, their tension palpable as they devised their strategy, yet Clara's focus was razor-sharp. The time for wavering was over. She was not merely fighting to reclaim her father's legacy but to forge her own path in an empire that had started to feel foreign and hostile. "We need to set up the communication channel tonight," Clara urged, her voice steady and resolute. "Time is not our friend. If there's still anyone at the company who values loyalty over profit, we need to make it easy for them to reach out." Detail by detail, Clara outlined the logistics: a secure, anonymous messaging app, discreet but accessible enough for anyone feeling marginalized within the company. As her colleagues approved, Clara became acutely aware of her growing authority, a mantle she had never envisioned wearing just a week prior. "Go to your contacts," she instructed, watching as her friends quickly began typing. "We'll need representatives from every department. If we can establish a network, we'll expose every strand of deception lurking behind the facade of our boardroom meetings." With each name mentioned, Clara felt a stirring pulse of confidence. She had a plan, and it was unfolding beneath her hands as if it were the one true story she had been meant to write. Yet the shadows of her threats lingered like a looming specter. Could she really trust her allies? Was she ready for the backlash when the board learned of her insurrection? as they raced against the clock, Clara's mind flickered to the specifics of her father's teachings. Success relies on integrity, he had often said, and integrity is the bedrock of trust. If she was to unmask the deceit, she had to ensure that her approach didn't just wield power but demanded respect. A difficult balance. Hours stretched, and Clara felt the layers of her strategy deepen, even as doubt snaked through the corners of her mind. Was she truly prepared to risk her own safety? Would the revelations she sought create collateral damage she wouldn't be able to handle? Even as her friends rallied with vigor, Clara faced a hard truth: betrayal could come from anywhere. Family, friends, and even within herself. Suddenly, a familiar face lingered in her thoughts: her father. She could hear the vibrations of his voice narrating moments from her childhood. "To lead is to engage with your heart and mind, Clara," he would say, pressing the importance of emotional intelligence in business. As she sat in her living room surrounded by her team, pushing through barriers of dialogue and strategy, Clara began to digest what it meant to combine her passion with intellect. Each suggestion from her friends became a puzzle piece, and before long, they crafted a coherent plan. Trusting her instincts, Clara decided to leverage her personal narrative for her advantage. "I will remain the public face of our movement," she declared. "Our message will reflect my experience. If the board chooses to dismiss me, they'll reveal themselves in their arrogance." Monica's eyes sparkled with approval, a hint of pride shimmering at Clara's unexpected revelation. "You're doing this, Clara. You're stepping up." As the night wore on, a surge of both exhilaration and terror coursed through Clara. This was no small skirmish. It was a declaration, and wavering now wasn't an option. On the cusp of reshaping her destiny, she thought back to that ominous message. "You have no idea who you're up against." Did she need to ascertain the depths of this threat? Her chest tightened as another layer of reality draped over her ambition. Ethical boundaries would be tested, and morals challenged for the sake of unearthing the truth. As dawn approached, Clara's fingers hit the screen one last time, sending out an upbeat message signaling the official launch of their covert network. But before she turned off her phone, a new notification brightened the screen. An unknown number, the message succinct yet heavy: "Let us see how far you can go, Clara." The stakes were escalating, her defiance igniting forces she couldn't fully comprehend. Was she ready to confront the labyrinthine depths of her family's legacy, and how far down the rabbit hole would she have to venture? Clara hovered over her phone, heart thudding in her chest as she reread the anonymous message. Each word felt like a gauntlet thrown at her feet, daring her to proceed with her plans. The uncertainty wrapped around her like a fog, but amid it, clarity emerged from the depths of her resolve. She would not back down. She refused to let intimidation dictate her narrative any longer. She gathered the team once again, their determination palpable as the first rays of sunlight spilled through the window. Clara knew they needed an explicit strategy to respond to the looming threat and maintain momentum. "We have to work in pairs," she said, her voice steady. "This is about building trust, not just the illusion of it. We need to reach out to those within the company who might be on the fence. New alliances are our lifeblood now." As her colleagues nodded in agreement, Clara felt her earlier self-doubt begin to dissipate. She envisioned how each conversation would unfold, each name her team brought to the table sparking ideas and strengthening her plan. Clara realized that while she had been the voice igniting this movement, it was the collective impact of those around her that would ultimately determine its success. "Let us craft a message that resonates," Monica contributed. "Something personal that's more than just a call to arms. We need to appeal to their sense of purpose." As they discussed, Clara absorbed the energy radiating from her colleagues, an impressive mix of passion and intellectual fervor. This collaborative spirit echoed her father's teachings, reinforcing her belief in the value of magnanimous leadership. Days turned into a blur of activity, filled with brainstorming sessions and late-night phone calls. Clara found herself escalating through tasks, her responsibilities shifting as she embraced her growing role within the movement. Yet, even as the work intensified, doubts trickled into her mind. Were they truly prepared for the repercussions? Would every action spark a counter-movement from the board, or worse, betrayals from within? One late evening, well past the usual hour, Clara sat alone at her desk. The glow of her computer screen illuminated her face, revealing lined brows and pursed lips as she drafted a new communication to their network. Her surroundings strewn coffee cups and half-assembled notes harkened back to quieter times, and Clara suddenly felt the weight of her solitude wash over her. She reached for her phone again, fingers hovering over the familiar contact images of friends and allies. Her isolation felt sharp and sudden, and for a moment, she allowed herself to question whether she had misunderstood her allies' commitment. Did they truly have her back, or were they merely following the thrill of rebellion? The looming notion of betrayal tarnished her spirit with the sting of doubt. Just as those thoughts began to spiral into deeper anxieties, her father's lessons surfaced again. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, Clara, but the decision to face it. With a deep breath, Clara replied to herself, "And I will face it head-on." The following day was pivotal. Clara prepared for a meeting with a mid-level executive who had expressed discontent with the board's recent decisions. As she walked to her car, she felt her pulse quicken, realizing she was stepping into the treacherous waters of the company's inner workings. Each interaction now had stakes beyond her previous understanding, and she needed to navigate it carefully. The conversation unfolded just as she had hoped, with Clara finding common ground as she shared her vision. The executive nodded, intrigued by the idea of a coalition built on more than profits. But just as they began to build momentum, a text message pinged on her phone. She wasn't prepared for the icy grip of fear that clutched her heart as she read the words, "Watch your back, Clara. You're digging into deep waters." With the stakes at an all-time high, Clara faced a daunting question: how deep was she willing to audibly swim without drowning in an ocean of enemies? As she walked away from the meeting, uncertainty gripped her mind, making her wonder if she had the strength to see this through. Clara lingered in the aftermath of her meeting, scanning the bustling office as if searching for lurking predators among her colleagues. The uncertainty tightened her chest like a clasped hand. Navigating corporate politics had never seemed so treacherous, but the unsettling message replayed in her mind, igniting her resolve. Trusting her instincts, she needed to forge a path not just through fear, but toward the alliance that could bolster her cause. Determined, Clara summoned her team for a quick huddle. It was time to take stock and prioritize their next steps. "We need to focus on the vulnerability within our organization," she asserted, casting a glance around the room filled with attentive faces. "We can't afford to be reactive, we must be strategic. We'll leverage our interactions into opportunities." Ideas flowed as if a dam had broken, and she felt a renewed sense of empathy for her teammates. She began to appreciate their shared vulnerability, their mutual hopes and fears. They were all invested in innovation, driven by their visions of a better future. But Clara knew they also faced the possibility of professional ruin if they did not tread carefully. In their collective brainstorming, she discovered allies who had been quietly accumulating discontent. Clara felt a flicker of gratitude. She was not alone in this fight. As the week progressed, Clara's communication style shifted. She honed her ability to listen, to absorb grievances, fears, and inspirations from those around her. In casual conversations, she wove her vision between their concerns, carefully nudging them toward her way of thinking. The culture began to scintillate with a sense of possibility fueled by her genuine investment in the well-being of others. Her growing confidence in public speaking illuminated their discussions, but unsettling whispers of doubt continued to taunt her in the quiet hours of the night. Clara pushed back against the intruding thoughts. This was not just about her. A revolution sparked by shared dreams would ultimately reshape the organization. Her father's words echoed, reminding her she was part of a legacy built not solely on ambition but on uplifting others. She made it her mission to cultivate a spirit of empowerment within her team, to reflect their voices in their shared initiative. Despite the spirit of camaraderie blossoming among the team, moments of intense isolation throbbed in her chest whenever she retreated into solitude. During one such evening, her spirited brainstorming led her to compose an urgent plan to rally the support of a few more influential executives. As thoughts raced behind her eyes, the cursor blinked impatiently on her screen, breaking through the silence as she crafted the message. Finally, in a blend of clarity and urgency, she wrote about her vision for change anchored in accountability, courage, and collaboration. Each word flowed from her with a sense of purpose, yet just as she was about to hit send, another message pinged on her phone: "You shouldn't be here. Leave while you can." Clara's resolve quivered. This was no longer just about igniting a movement, it was personal, mired in shadows and threats that loomed larger than any boardroom. Caught between empowerment and dread, Clara knew she had crossed an invisible line, and now it was time to confront the darker realities of her ambition. The exhilaration of pursuing her dreams clashed violently against the looming fear of betrayal and risks. As she closed her laptop, the weight of the decision before her pressed heavily. She had to choose how to respond to these threats. Would she pursue the truth relentlessly, or would she reconsider her strategy in light of this newfound reality? Something inside her shifted, the stakes were escalated. Clara stood on the precipice of transformation, a choice looming that would define who she became, not just as a leader within her organization, but as an individual ready for confrontation. Dread and anticipation wrestled within her as she took a deep breath. The moment to face the rising tide of opposition had arrived, and Clara realized she was ready to confront anyone who thought they could silence her. What awaited on the other side, she couldn't yet foresee. The faint hum of the overhead lights mingled with the rapid beating of Clara's heart as she stood facing her reflection in the polished glass wall of her office. The woman staring back carried the weight of uncertainty on her shoulders, yet a flicker of determination ignited in her chest. There was no more time for indecision. She had to act, confront the shadows lurking within her organization, and seize control of her narrative. Clara took a breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. She had spent days absorbing her team's vision, listening to their frustrations, and harvesting the potential that simmered within. They were ready for a change, a shift that could ripple throughout the company if only they had the right leadership to guide them. But a new thought gnawed at her: how could she lead when fear stalked her every step? The pending confrontation loomed large, yet the need for decisive action quieted her doubts, transforming them into a silent mantra. Empowerment first. Confrontation second. Before she could falter, Clara crafted her plan. She would rise above the chaos and address the executives responsible for her uncertainty directly. First, she needed to gather evidence not just of the threats she faced but of the support waiting to be mobilized. Team leaders had been voicing concerns that reverberated through the office walls, and Clara had the chance to channel that energy into something greater. That afternoon, she invited her allies, each of whom held pieces of the broader puzzle, to discuss the shifting tides. The strategy session buzzed with vigor as they exchanged insights and ideas. Clara positioned herself as the catalyst, encouraging her colleagues to articulate their worries and aspirations. With each voice amplified, her own anxiety diminished. This was no longer about her isolated struggle, it was about collective progress. Yet, amidst the passion, Clara couldn't shake the chill of unease. Each time she thought of sending her carefully crafted message to the executive board, the ominous warning echoed in her mind: leave while you can. It was a jarring reminder that danger wasn't just an abstract concept, it was real and quietly creeping into her life. As evening approached and the sun stretched shadows across the conference room table, a deliberate tranquility settled in. She was there, surrounded by camaraderie and collective purpose. Clara resolved to send out her call to arms that night. With newfound confidence, she composed her vision for the upcoming meeting with the executives, focusing on collaboration and transparency as the backbone for change. When her fingers hovered over the send button, muttering self-doubt echoed anew. But she pushed through. This is about all of us. Her thumb pressed down, sending her message into the digital void, an invitation for her colleagues to join her in the forthcoming meeting. It was an invitation to stand together, each voice bolstering the next. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Clara felt a strange mingling of liberation and trepidation. The messages of support began to trickle in from her team, confirming their commitment to her vision. Yet, in the stillness of her office, the lurking dread returned, gnawing mercilessly at her resolve. Would this collective effort be enough? Would they be able to confront the structures built on fear and secrecy? Rain began to patter against the glass, a rhythmic reminder that the storm wasn't just external. Clara set her jaw, a new resolve cementing within her. The stakes weren't merely professional anymore, they were deeply personal. She was unraveling the strands that had kept her tethered to a narrative dictated by others, but the deeper she ventured into this newfound journey, the clearer it became. She was not just challenging external forces, she was unearthing pieces of herself she had long suppressed. Strength blossomed from vulnerability, clarity emerged from chaos. Yet, just as clarity appeared within reach, a notification blinked ominously on her screen. A single word surged through her like ice: stop. The message bled urgency, warning her to abandon the impending confrontation. Who was watching? Who dared to threaten her in this moment of ascendance? The air throbbed with uncertainty as Clara felt the weight of her potential and the looming threats gather around her like a storm. The coming days would demand courage she was still discovering within herself. As she prepared to leave her office, Clara opened the window, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. Tomorrow, she would charge into the fray. In the burning center of this conflict lay her transformation, a confrontation far beyond the corporate fights. The time had come to face the truth behind every shadow, and with it, the strength necessary to carve her own path. What lay at the heart of this confrontation, Clara wondered, and how much more would she have to endure to uncover the truth? When dawn flickered through the blinds, Clara's mind raced with thoughts of uncertainty and purpose. The city outside buzzed to life, but she felt strangely disconnected from its vibrance. Each tick of the clock echoed in her chest like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation, a moment she longed for yet dreaded in equal measure. She had sent the message, igniting hope within her colleagues, but the opposing forces loomed larger than ever, casting shadows over her resolve. During her morning coffee ritual, Clara's reflection revealed a woman teetering on the precipice of transformation. She clicked through the social media updates of peers and mentors, seeking inspiration in their stories of resilience. Yet with every scroll, a familiar strain of self-doubt whispered in her ear, "What do you really know about leadership?" She snapped her lid shut, determined to focus on actionable strategies. At the office, Clara was met with an undercurrent of energy coursing through the air. Her team had gathered, eyes glimmering with anticipation and apprehension. Clara saw her reflection in their eyes, a blend of enthusiasm and fear. She took a deep breath, centering herself amid the whirlwind of emotion. This gathering was her chance to solidify her role as a leader, to prove to herself and to them that change was not just a desire but a deliverable. "Let's dive in," she said, projecting confidence that she didn't entirely feel. Voices joined hers in a chorus of ideas and frustrations, and for the first time, Clara wore her vulnerability like armor. Sharing her own fears about the executive confrontation became a rallying point. The response was electric. They weren't merely supporting her, they were defining a united front. Clara realized that her honesty had freed them, it had illuminated their shared aspirations and fears. As brainstorming unfolded, she became increasingly adept at channeling their energy into actionable plans. Clara took notes fervently, weaving a tapestry of ideas that melded into a coherent strategy. Together, they dissected the structure of the company, its silos, and the stifling culture that had taken root. Each revelation felt like whittling away at her own blockades. However, as the meeting pressed on, a gnawing thought surfaced. What of her autonomy? Could she truly navigate this labyrinth of power while upholding her newfound stance? A lingering fear echoed. What if her attempts to shift to transparency were met with hostility? It was a fear that had tangled itself in the back of her mind since the ominous message the night before. After the meeting, Clara found herself alone for a brief moment, standing in front of her office window. She gazed at the rhythm of commuters below, their lives unfolding in chaotic harmony. She questioned her own role in this bustling reality. Was she merely a participant, or could she take the lead? Determination sparked anew as she opened a new document on her laptop, titled Vision for Tomorrow. The very act of writing felt cathartic, as if she were laying the blueprint for her potential. Each word poured out, driven by the realization that power did not only lie with those who enforced authority, it also resided in those willing to challenge it with clarity and purpose. But reality knocked unceremoniously. An email notification interrupted her flow. A meeting request appeared from the executive board scheduled for tomorrow. Just the day after she shared her vision with her team. The timing felt orchestrated, and with it came a wave of anxiety. They would want answers, solutions, but what could she provide when she was grappling with her own uncertainties? Clara's heart raced once more. Would they question her authority or worse, her motives? The stakes had been raised, and now she questioned whether she had prepared her team fully enough for the challenges to come. With resolute determination, she pinned the email to the top of her inbox, and a new thought struck her like lightning: she could use this meeting to not only defend her position but to redefine it. A flicker of rebellion ignited within her. This was her chance to shine a light not just on the issues but on the potential that existed within her team. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation and doubt as she reflected on the day ahead. Would the confrontation with the board result in her empowerment or expose her vulnerabilities? Clara meticulously plotted her next moves. There was no going back, both the outcome suggesting victory and defeat played a precarious dance in her mind. But one thing became increasingly clear: she was ready to confront not only the board but herself, the guardian of her own choices. As she prepared for the upcoming meeting, another notification flashed on her phone, demanding attention. It was from an unknown sender but promised a message that could alter everything. Clara hesitated, cautious curiosity coiled within her. What now? What else could threaten her newfound ascent? Clara's fingers hovered over the glowing screen, her heart pounding with each passing second. She finally summoned the courage to open the message, revealing a single line that struck her deep: "We need to talk about what you uncovered." The signature was simply initials, but it felt weighty, a secret waiting to be unraveled. Questions swirled within her, a distinct shuffle in her gut signaling both a looming crisis and the chance for a game-changing revelation. Was this a threat to her newly minted leadership role, or an unexpected ally stepping forward? The uncertainty gripped her like a vice. She closed her laptop, unable to consider the implications further. Not now. Instead, Clara returned to her notebook, where her ideas about the company's future lay sprawling across the pages. The board meeting beckoned like a looming storm, and she needed all her strength to face it. Focused again, she scribbled down potential questions they might ask, crafting thoughtful responses, mapping offensive strategies to redirect their concerns into conversations about growth and innovation. But another thought flickered, uninvited. Her mind whispered that perhaps the email wasn't entirely separate from the gathering storm on the horizon. Was it her own ambition that put the target on her back? Could her sudden push for reform provoke those who preferred the status quo? Each question added a weight to the urgency building within her, and she felt caught between her aspirations and the fear of backlash. The day unfolded in drudgery, the hours stretching like shadows across her desk while her team prepared for the confrontation with their usual mix of hope and anxiety. She held moments of courage, rallying her team with snippets of encouragement, urging them to articulate their ideas. Yet, her own veins pulsed with uncertainty, a stark contrast to the smiles she projected. As evening approached, Clara found herself staring out the office window again, this time relinquishing the last threads of solitude. She watched the city pulsate, a reminder of the pulse inside her that had grown frenetic. Could she truly transform her encounters with the executive board into transformative experiences for her team? Or would that ambition only usher in a reckoning of failure? Drawing in a deep breath, she returned to the project at hand, furiously typing notes that felt clarifying. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a text from the unknown number, simply stating, "Meet me before your presentation. I've information that can change everything. You won't regret it." Her stomach dropped, excitement clashing with trepidation. What information could possibly sway the board's opinion, or was this a trap? Clara suppressed the urge to dismiss it, reminded of the leadership vision she had just crafted with her team. Perhaps this could be the missing piece she needed, a puzzle that could amplify their collective strengths in the meeting. After several heartbeats of indecision, she texted back her location and time, feeling the weight of choice settle squarely in her chest. Would she meet this anonymous figure and discover a tool to wield against potential opposition? Or would she place herself in a vulnerability that could shatter her cause? Determination surged within her as she prepared to leave the office. She reminded her team of their strengths and their vision, fueling their final moments before the confrontation. She felt the energy shift. They were no longer just her team but shared visionaries battling a collective inertia. With her resolve firm but her heart racing, Clara sent herself off into the uncertainty ahead. What awaited her at the evening rendezvous, a secret that could change her course, or merely another distraction from the path she had chosen? As the city lights flickered like stars, she took one last breath before stepping into the unknown. The fusion of anticipation and anxiety swirled within her. Was she ready for this next chapter? With her heart pounding, an undeniable truth sank in: she might be on the verge of discovering not only new dimensions of leadership but also the deeper courage to confront her own vulnerabilities. Alone on the threshold of revelation, she pressed forward, whispering to herself, "Whatever comes, I am ready to face it." The boardroom felt like a coliseum, tension heavy in the air, eyes sharpening into focus as Clara Blake squared her shoulders and slipped into her role. This space, once defined by suffocating expectations and parental shadows, pulsated with a new adrenaline, the adrenaline of potential. The executive members seated around the polished table were yet unaware of the transformation that had taken shape within her. Clara opened the meeting with a steady voice, brimming with authority. "Thank you all for coming today. I want to address the evolving landscape of our company and the fundamental shifts we must embrace to protect the legacy we've built together." She watched the initial flickers of skepticism slowly melt into intrigue. Their eyes held her. There was no judgment now, just the expectation of solutions. As she navigated through her carefully crafted presentation, she drew not just on facts and figures but on the collective ideals she and her allies had discussed for days. She wove their voices into her narrative, advocating for transparency, ethical practices, and accountability within the board. "Our strength lies not in profit margins alone but in the integrity with which we build our reputation," she asserted, letting the weight of her words settle in the room. Clara's pulse quickened when a pertinent question arose from a veteran board member, probing her resolve and intentions. "Clara, what leads you to believe a significant shift in our culture would yield the results we need to stay competitive?" His tone held a hint of menace, setting the stage for a challenge. "Mr. Anderson," she continued, locking eyes with him, "it's about investing in our people, our values, and our commitment to ethical leadership. Organizational growth comes from an empowered workforce that believes in our mission." She felt a rush, an exhilaration she hadn't known before, as she stepped beyond the shadow of her father's influence. The meeting thickened with dialogue as she pushed past resistance, her transparency illuminating the stark contrasts between their current practices and the aspirational culture they could cultivate. Clara sensed the weight of momentum, her narrative resonating with those around her. This wasn't merely her battle, it was a collective calling for integrity. As the deliberations advanced, an unforeseen ally emerged from within the gathering ranks. One of the quieter executives, who had often seemed indifferent, slid into the conversation, voicing support for Clara's vision and sharing her discontent regarding luxuries gained at the cost of core values. Clara felt a rush of gratitude, recognizing that seeding hope had fostered rebellion against complacency. After several back-and-forth exchanges, Clara proposed actionable steps, a multi-tiered plan addressing how to integrate the new ethical framework into daily practices. She punctuated each idea with confidence, outlining tangible metrics for success. It was a far cry from the once uncertain daughter of a blind CEO. She had morphed into a leader demandingly carving out her path. The resolution of the meeting unfurled like the wings of a newly emerged butterfly. A consensus to enact change had developed among the board members. For the first time, Clara felt their respect shift towards her. Compliments reverberated as she smiled, proud of the metamorphosis she underwent both personally and professionally. A week after that defining meeting, Clara stood on the cusp of her surgery, nervous but undeniably empowered. Production reports had indicated revitalizing positivity within the company, driven from her initiative and the collaboration that followed. The beleaguered whispers of betrayal had evaporated, replaced with solidarity. Fellow colleagues emboldened by her choices and willing to champion the cause. Clara took a deep breath as she prepared to face the operation, recognizing that she had expanded beyond any individual label. "I am Clara Blake, a leader of vision," she affirmed quietly. This surgery marked not only the enhancement of her sight but also the fulfillment of her personal trajectory, an embodiment of resilience and empowerment. The ensuing weeks brought waves of change, with Clara cementing her role as a recognized force within the corporation. She spearheaded initiatives, fiercely advocating for transparency while nurturing her unique narrative. Not only did her colleagues embrace her vision, but the professionals across the industry began to note her burgeoning influence, marking her as a beacon of change. Beyond all the achievements, her most substantial transformation lay not in accolades but in the profound realization that she had become her own woman, the steward of her father's legacy and the creator of her narrative. Clara Blake was no longer just the blind CEO's daughter, she was a resolute architect of corporate integrity. Her phone buzzed that morning with an encouraging text from Lucas, the man whose presence had subtly sparked flames of change within her. "We've believed in you from day one. You've proved that every challenge is a chance for growth." Perhaps that was the crux. Challenges had faded into opportunities, each celebration of overcoming propelling her forward. Holding her father's lessons dear, Clara embraced the confidence coursing through her veins. Every ounce of fear had been alchemized into purpose and fortitude. As Clara perched on the edge of new beginnings, the call for a broader movement beckoned. She was ready to lead the charge, unmistakably invested in not just challenges but the beautiful tapestry they could weave across the industry with ethics appreciated rather than discarded. The knots of her earlier fears unspooled, revealing an expansive vista, a limitless horizon where she could write bold stories of transformation and legacy for years to come. Your journey towards transformation could be just as profound. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every action counts. Comment on your reactions and theories about this groundbreaking ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and unleash their own narratives. This is the moment to show your support and join the movement of personal growth. Don't wait even one more second to share and be part of our connected transformation.